How are you doing? My name is Alex Farrington. I'm with Prestige Valet Services, and what I promised you guys, we're going to be discussing the top 10 stolen cars in our company's history. Now, mind you, not all these cars were stolen immediately. Not all these cars were stolen this year, last year. They could have happened probably close to 20 years ago, so back in the 1990s or even early 2000s. But I promised to share these stories, what we did, how much they cost our company, and if they were out of our possession in any kind of way, this is what I consider a stolen car. The first car I'm going to talk about is going to be back in about 2011, 2010, we had a stolen Cadillac Escalade. What happened, we had a private event we were hired for. It was an incredible event. We had tons of cars, probably about close to 250 cars parked at that event. So what we did, we had all the cars lined up. What we have a tendency on doing is putting all the SUVs together because we can maximize space there, have all the small cars over there. If we really get creative, we'll start color coding them because we're a bunch of nerds half the time. But anyway, there was a beautiful black Cadillac Escalade that came in, had beautiful rims, and we had it kind of parked at the front of that row for the SUVs. Throughout the night, we're running back and forth. We have about 10 valets running in different directions. So if something happens, I hate to say, unfortunately, we might not know unless we're standing directly in front of that car. So what happened, this person came out, they gave us the ticket, the claim check, and we went to find the car, and we could not find the car. We had the key, but we couldn't find the car. And that's a pretty distinctive car, so we looked, could not find it. We assumed this car was now stolen. So we went back to the customer. We had to inform her. She was not happy at all. We had to get her home, call the police obviously beforehand, let them come out and take a report and figure out that A, the valet company's not really responsible because as long as we have the key in our possession, we didn't do anything negligent. Someone somehow figured out a way to get into that car and drive it without the key. So the car was later found, probably about 2 weeks later, completely stripped down. But what we did notice, they had entered the car through, I guess, the door handle. There was a door handle, a part of it, that they were able to get under it, and that allowed them to get into the car without setting off the alarm. So based on that, once they got inside, I'm not sure how they hotwired it, but they got this car. Unfortunately, the customer was not happy, but in our particular case, what saved us was in about 2010, 2011, the Cadillac Escalade was the #1 most stolen vehicle. So there's nothing we can really do unless we literally put a guard in front of that car to prevent that from happening. But if we're just doing our regular duties and we're in and out of the lot frequently, there's nothing we can do to prevent that happen. Number 9, we had an Acura RDX. That was kind of a similar case. This happened about 3 years ago. So these are the new cars that have the digital proximity key. So what happened in this particular case, we had an Acura RDX. The valet got distracted by a customer, or not even a customer, but I guess a criminal or a friend of the criminal that pulled him out of the parking lot. The lockbox was secure, the cars were all locked, so he didn't have any fear. So he was dealing with that customer, but little did we know his friend or partner came over and scanned the entire key box and was able to obtain a code digitally. Little did we know, but from what we found out later, there should have something called a Faraday cage, which would have prevented the scanning of those electronics. But what that criminal did, he was able to get the code, and we saw on video that he was able to unlock that Acura RDX. The valet still being distracted up front, it took that customer or the criminal probably about 3 or 4 minutes to start the car, but digitally he was able to start that car from within inside and drive away. The valet heard the car start. No, there was no one in the back, so he started running for the back. And that's when the criminal almost ran him over, getting out of the parking lot. We informed the customer immediately. We still had the key in the possession, and ironically, she had her key in her purse, the backup key. The insurance company called us and they said, hey, what happened with this vehicle? We told them, hey, the car was in our possession. They scanned the codes and they were able to steal the car. Fortunately, in our particular case, we weren't responsible for it, and honestly, I never heard back from that customer again. I did get the call, and I came over as quickly as possible, and of course, I give them a ride home, and I expressed my sorrow, and we honestly try to prevent from any of this stuff from happening, but unfortunately, it happened. So in this particular case, that person, I don't even know if they got their car back. We never heard back from them after I dropped them off at their home. The next one that happened was kind of a funny story. We had a customer come in a I think a Ford pickup truck, a Ford F-150 or F-250 pickup truck. We did notice the customer did have a dirt bike strapped into the rear of it. And when we park the cars in all different, pretty much for the same parking lot throughout the area. So we didn't know that this customer actually got finished. That was a present for his son, and they had just got finished purchasing this motorcycle and bringing it here, and it was really a nice dirt bike. But what happened, even though nobody stole the vehicle, they were able to cut the straps and lift the dirt bike out of the bed of the truck without us knowing. So we didn't know any better. So when we pulled the truck up later on in the evening, the customer gets upset because he sees the motorcycle is no longer there. Dirt bike, I'm sorry. So anyway, what do? We sit there and apologize, and he actually is accusing us. He thinks we did it. He thinks we cut the straps and took his motorcycle out of the parking lots. Out of the back of his truck. But we called the police, of course. There's nothing we can do because actually that's considered additional property that we're not responsible for. So again, in that case, we didn't really have to pay anything, but that customer was very pissed off with us for the longest time. This next story was actually pretty, I want to say it's funny, but not funny, but this happened probably about 2006, 2007. We had a regular team working at this restaurant, and what was weird, a customer went in the restaurant, then he came out and he was smoking a cigarette. We were in a circular circular driveway, so the cars were coming in, and the valet would move one car up, and unfortunately they had a bad habit of leaving the car running that was behind it. Then it moved that car up, then pull the key out, and then go to the next car behind it as the customers got out of the car. Well, the customer who was smoking a cigarette must have found a car that he liked, because when the valet moved one car up, he jumped into the next car, which was an Acura RDX. Not an RDX, I apologize, a RSX. So it was a little sports car. I think it replaced the Acura Integra back in the day. So he hopped in that car. Little did the customer know, when he pulled behind out of the parking lot, instead of making a left to go back toward the freeway, he turned right, and it turned into a dead-end street. So the valet saw that he had pulled off and started chasing him with full force. He's yelling to the other valet, "Get that car, it's stolen!" But unfortunately, the other valet was hearing impaired. So he didn't see it, he couldn't see his lips moving, and he just let the car zip right past him. Anyway, our primary valet chased the guy down into the corner, and I guess the criminal in that car saw that he was chasing him down, got out the car, and ran back towards the restaurant. We were able to get the car back in our possession and park the car properly, but the guy attempted to go back into the restaurant like nothing was wrong. We didn't know what was in the world, so of course we call the police, and he proceeds to wait for the table and attempt to sit down with the rest of his family. We have no idea what in the world was wrong with him, but the police did, of course, come and arrest the guy, and then we notified the customer. Nothing happened with the vehicle, but it was out of our possession for about 30 to 60 seconds. This story happened, unfortunately, January of this year. We had a brand new 2019 Range Rover come in. The car was literally 3 weeks old. Brand new, top of the line, almost price tag close to $100,000. The valet's getting a bad habit of, when they park the cars, they lock the keys in the key box. Everything goes great, everything is fine, but what they did, the bad habit that the valets have, at the end of the night, when the customers come out, they'll give you a claim check. If there's 3 or 4 customers that come out, they'll take 3 or 4 claim checks, they'll pull the keys, and then place them on top of the podium, so as they're running back and forth, they can just grab the next key. Little did they know, a criminal came in and grabbed one of the keys, and it was to that brand new Range Rover. So they got it out of the possession, and the owner was luckily standing right there at the front door. When the valets told them that the car was just stolen, they were able to pull it up on their GPS, on the app on their phone, and see exactly where that car was. So we called the police came out, they tracked the car and realized it was parked only 2 blocks away. What these criminals did, they were trying to be smart with it. They backed the car in so the license plate couldn't be detected. They just basically sat on the car and waited for the heat to die down, and then they would drive the car off later. But the police were able to find the car, but within those few minutes, they were able to get into the back and try to disconnect the GPS. I guess they knew a lot about this vehicle. Anyway, the car had to go to the dealership, it had to be rekeyed, and that took quite a bit of long time. But also this owner, who was very nice, but he was very honest, he said, my car is now not worth what it was just 30 minutes ago because it now has a stolen car on its record, the Carfax, what you can say. So he wanted to have something called diminished value, meaning my car is no longer worth what it was worth a year ago or a month ago or 2 weeks ago because it now has that branded thing on its record. So we had to negotiate back and forth. He was asking for almost $9,000 worth of diminished value, but we had to calculate that that's depreciation also. Everybody knows as soon as you drive a car off the lot, it depreciates. So anyway, this guy, we ended up negotiating, and I think we ended up paying him $4,800 in diminished value. So that wasn't pretty, but that was a lesson we learned. So now, of course, all my valets know, do not leave keys on top of that podium at any time. If you pull a key out, you take it with you until you come back to it. So